Interesting. Okay, so we're just going to have a look at the, I'm going to briefly touch on the theories linking nature and well-being. Some of you, if you're used to nature-based practices, these theories would be very common to you. If you're not, it's no problem. So the first one really is the biophilia hypothesis. So these are the three main theories that come up in a lot of the research and the literature. Basically what the biophilia hypothesis states is that we have this innate biological connection that's evolutionary, and the more disconnected we are from our natural environment, the more psychological damage that it is doing to us. So it's almost like we're breaking the bond with, you know, Mother Earth or with ourselves. So a lot of research on the biophilia hypothesis. The second one, attention restoration theory, was developed, Kaplan and Kaplan, they're two psychologists, environmental psychologists. And basically what that theory is about is that, you know, when we are stuck in front of screens, when we are stuck really directing our attention, we get cognitive fatigue. And because our attention is so directed, it exhausts us really. So when we're out in nature, it's more expansive. It's not as direct attention. It's more kind of effortless engagement. So they say that our cognitive capacities, I suppose, are restored, our attention is restored, and that even looking at, I think there's some research that even looking at a micro break, looking at a green roof for 40 seconds for some employees had a positive effect in terms of their performance. So that's a big theory, attention restoration theory. But also the importance there is about getting away from your day-to-day life. So there has to be a concept that, you know, you're getting away from the mundanity, I suppose. And stress reduction theory. This is a theory that looked at the psychophysiological relaxation response to being in a built-up environment, surrounded by concrete, surrounded by cars, and then being in a more natural environment where they had a softer soundscape like a forest, and how people's stress levels really reduced. So these would be the main theories if you were interested in looking up further. Okay, so just in terms of stress reduction, a lot of the research focuses on the stress reduction capacities, I suppose, of being in a natural environment, being in a forested environment. So what we know is that the concept of nature therapy, I suppose, is that if we go into a forested environment, it can be known as a restorative environment because we're not being bombarded with the noise of traffic, pollution, some of those stressors on our bodies, and that can lead to physiological relaxation, which has a positive impact on the immune system functioning. So what we know of, you know, is if we're going for a job interview, if we've got an exam, often we can get sick because our bodies are a little bit stressed and our immune system is weakened. So what they're saying in terms of the concept of nature therapy is that a lot of the benefits is on the stress reduction that can boost the immune system functioning. So it's a preventative medical effect. And what we know in terms of chronic stress is that it leads to mental health difficulties and physical health difficulties. So it's a really important aspect. So also there's a new concept called Eco-Psychosomatics. So it's evidence-based science of the biological as well as the psychological and sensoric impact of plants, animals, and ecosystems on the physical and mental health of human beings. So again, there's a lot of research being done in this area, in the area of environmental psychology, how different natural environments impact the bodies on different levels. So just in terms of the international evidence base, again, what we're finding in the research is that there's conceptual ambiguity regarding forest therapy in the literature. So again, some people would say forest therapy is green exercise, it's physical activity outdoors. Some of the research would say forest therapy is psychotherapy outdoors. So there's a confusion as to what exactly the definition is and what are they studying. So it's an emerging evidence base. Majority of the studies, the older studies, were in Japan and Korea, and there was a limited demographic, usually college students. So for me, there's a really important Forest Europe, which is it's the European body responsible for forest policy. They spent 4 years looking at the health benefits of forests. So for me, this is the most comprehensive study, in terms of the health benefits of forested environments. And I've put it in the end for the references. So they're saying that there's a strong evidence that forest visits have a positive impact on restoration and psychological well-being, improve mood and attention, and enhance psychological stress recovery. So that's very strong. That's what I say. And the strongest evidence is in the tension restoration and stress reduction. And there's substantial evidence of the potential benefits of contact with nature for avoiding health problems. So that would be around disease prevention. There's increasing evidence that visits to the forest environment can have a positive physiological effect, such as to lower blood pressure, reduce cortisol levels, and suppress sympathetic nervous activity. So again, in terms of those physiological effects, and forest visits can also reduce cardiovascular risk as a result of stress recovery. So again, the research in Europe is really only started over the last 10 to 15 years, but that is, for me, that would be a really important study. So these are just a couple of the relevant studies. So the health and well-being benefits of spending time in forest, systematic review. They looked at 6 randomized control trials. And the conclusion was that forest therapy may play an important role in health promotion and disease prevention. However, the lack of high quality studies limits the strength of the results, rendering the evidence insufficient to establish clinical practice guidelines for its use. So more robust randomized control trials are warranted. So that's what we know, because it's really early days in terms of defining this practice. A lot of research needs to be done in this area. So this is another state-of-the-art review. It looked at 64 studies, and the conclusion was that longitudinal research conducted worldwide is needed to produce new evidence of the relationships associated with Shinrin-yoku and clinical therapeutic effects. So nature therapy as a health promoting method and potential universal health model is implicated for the reduction of reported modern day stress state and technostress. So again, it's saying the same thing, that more research needs to be done with specific populations. So just in terms of the gaps in the current research, very little information in relation to the intervention components. I am always shocked at the level, the quality of the research. We were at a conference last year in the World Conference on Forest and Public Health, and somebody presented on a forest therapy intervention they did for people in an inpatient unit with psychosis. But they couldn't tell us what they did apart from walk in the forest. So again, there is a frustration there that, people are doing so many different things in the forest. So how can you measure like with like? So yeah, limited research with specific populations. A lot of the research has been done with healthy male college students. Little description in relation to forest type in research. That's the other issue. People have a very different experience if you bring them into a forest that's all planted, monocrop, maybe pine, logpole pine, than a forest, an old ancient primeval forest that is very rare to find, but they have a very different experience. So limited lifespan approach, majority research on healthy adults, and majority of studies are short-term with little follow-up.